Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to my channel. I'm Thomasin PA2066. Today is 13th of January 2023. Today's topic is on MEAS Standard 7. This is with regards to core agency. Let me begin. Hi, welcome to my channel. MEAS 7 core agency. I'm Thomasin PA2066. Today, 13th of January 2023. So this is a topic which I want to emphasize on the form to use, the types of agreement on a core agency. Let us begin. Well, how do you remember the 10 standards? That means if you are studying for the exam or you are preparing for the TPC, so how do you remember Malaysian Estate Agency Standard? I do it this way, so I divided these 10 different standards into 3 parts. So give them the abbreviations. So ONE is 1, and then FTA in the middle, and the last is COVCAT. So COVCAT, I would pronounce it as COVCAT. So 1 FTA COVCAT. So that is the way I remember. So 1 is O means office, N means negotiator, E means engagement. So the first engagement is type of engagement. Second part is the FTA. F is fees, and T is actually terms of the engagement, and A is advertising, so which regards to marketing and advertising. COVCAT, which I pronounce as COVCAT or COVCAT, is actually core agency, which is standard 7. V means viewing, and then CAT is actually the last number 9, which is client's account, and number 10, which is tenancy administration. So I remember this ONE, FTA, and COVCAT. So this is the way I remember the different standards. So what exactly is reason that you need a core agency? So the reason for core agency to exist is because there is these 2 appointment types, which is called the exclusive appointment and the sole appointment. In the earlier standard, 2014 and the 1999 types of versions, then you have the appointment. In the 2020 version, which is the latest MEAS 2020 version, the appointment now is replaced by the term engagement. So it's about exclusive and sole engagement. So if you are in a exclusive or a sole engagement with the vendor, or meaning there is already an agent exclusively engaged or solely engaged, then the remaining agents or the other potential buyer's agent cannot approach the owner anymore, cannot approach the vendor. So because of the scenario that exclusive and sole agency engagement protects the listing agent, and therefore the sole agent, being that the agent who is appointed and the seller himself sells the property, whereas exclusive means the agent is given exclusive right to represent the owner, and even the owner managed to sell the property, it still owe to the exclusive agent the agency fee. So in these 2 conditions of types of engagement, no other agent should approach the vendor or the owner. So for the deal to get in, that means when a potential buyer is represented by a third agent, this third agent has a way to close the deal by being a core agent. So it's a buyer's agent as a core agent with the permission, of course, from the listing agent. Of course, the listing agent has to work with this core agent, as the potential buyer is represented by the core agent. So this is the reason why a core agency exists in a scenario of one or exclusive agent is been appointed and no other agent will be appointed by the owner. I maybe take this opportunity just to give you a comparison how this is not to confuse you hopefully, but to let you know that in the setting that both parts, that means if agent who works for the vendor is paid by the vendor, and you have a buyer who is willing to pay the buyer's agent, that means another agent will come forward and say that I want to help my buyer and I'm not getting paid from you as the listing agent, then in that scenario it's not co-agency. So in that scenario, both parties represent their own principal, which means the owner of the property has his own agent and the purchaser appoint his own agent, and both pays their own agent separately, not from the single transaction. So it's different from co-agency in the sense that in the co-agency, the co-agent, the buyer's agent, actually is not paid by the buyer. Purchaser doesn't appoint the co-agent as to represent, and there is no payment or agreed paid fee for the engagement from the buyer's side. So what is a co-agency letter? That means the agency which represent the owner has an agreement with the buyer's agency. So that is actually agency to agency. It's an agreement between two agencies. Here I put down as the listing agent pointing to the co-agent. So the listing agent is the agent who represent the vendor, the owner of the property, and the listing agent in a normal transaction of a matching purchaser actually is paid a agency commission or professional fee from the owner. The owner appoints this listing agent to represent him to advertise, to do the marketing. At the end, if a successful sale is achieved, then the owner, which is the seller, will pay this listing agent. And this listing agent in scenario shares this commission with the co-agent. So the co-agency agreement is to signify that there is this relationship of sharing this agency commission. So either it is initiated by the listing agent to the co-agent, or it actually can also be proposed by the co-agent for the letter to be signed by the listing agent. But then if you think about it, why should a listing agent need a co-agent? Who is in fact in the control to demand for the more powerful position? So if you think that you are an exclusive agent to a property which is hot, and you are able to sell it on your own, then you actually do not need a third-party agent or a co-agent to introduce a purchaser. So in such a good state of able to sell on your own, you usually would not want a co-agent to share your fee. So usually if a scenario that is such, that means the listing agent is more powerful in demanding that the deal be closed. That means the co-agent is in a weaker position. So in such a weaker position, the usual scenario is the co-agent would want to initiate this deal. That means to ask for a commitment by issuing a letter to the listing agent, because the listing agent can do without this co-agency, whereas the co-agent cannot do without this property, because his buyer he has got a buyer who is interested in such a property, and that property currently is as an exclusive or a sole agency by the listing agent. So therefore, such a weaker position of the core agent, usually the core agent would initiate the letter of core agency to be signed by the listing agent. Usually we talk about this as in the aspect that core agent is more anxious or more in the pushing position to bring forward a buyer. So of course, if a listing agent is to object or to reject this proposal, then he has to sell the house on his own. And a lot of time, the opposite scenario could happen. Let me progress. The opposite scenario could happen because the listing agent is unable to sell the property, being that it may be a specialist type of property. It could be a property that is a niche area, and therefore in his own database he could not sell this property himself, and such makes him a weaker position, where a potential buyer who is represented by the core agent step forward. So this core agent being in now the opposite condition of being more powerful, and therefore would be the target for the listing agent to offer to have a agency to agency agreement, which is the letter of core agency. So now you can see there are two here. One is for the purpose of sale, core agency agreement for the sale of property, and the other one is a core agency agreement for a renter of a property. So as you can see, the two types of letter about the same content and signed off by the agency principal of the proposing agency and then the accepting agency. So we hereby confirm our acceptance of the above terms and conditions for the core agency agreement. So if it is a proposal by the core agent, that means the proposal of the core agent writes to the listing agent, and the listing agent principal to sign to accept this proposal. Of course, if it is a listing agent, in the second scenario where the listing agent is anxious to get this purchaser to come forward and willing to work with this core agent, and hereby the listing agent will propose to the core agent, which is the core agency firm, so that the core agency firm principal would acknowledge and sign this agreement. So the content of this, of course, let us say what is it, the core agency agreement. So usually it's from the scenario of the listing agent to core agent, because usually listing agent who can sell on itself, on its own ability to sell, would not require a core agent to come forward, and only in a condition that listing agent become a weaker position, unable to sell the property, therefore willing to work with a core agent. And in such a way, the agreement need to spell out very importantly a few points. Here I just summarize it, that this working condition would be a time frame, that is how long that this core agent has been given this special condition where the core agent can bring forward the purchaser. So in a scenario, if it is 3 months, then within these 3 months, this core agency setup is being practiced. So of course, it also need to specify if the deal is closed, how much is the sharing of the commission. In normal scenario is half 50%. The listing agent need to take out from the commission the listing agent receives to give it to the co-agent. Who keeps the booking in the latest MEAS 2020? Both sides can keep the booking fee. That means the purchaser can pay the booking fee to the agency that is the co-agent, and kept by the co-agent. On the other hand, the earlier on standard actually says the listing agent is to collect the deposit or the booking. So the deposit should be kept by the listing agent. On this part, the new change to the standard, many practitioners in the market feels that the co-agent should not keep the booking fee. The simple reason is it is still the right of the vendor, the owner of the property, to appoint who to keep. So in fact, if you take a standard scenario of a vendor who is appointing an agent to make collection of booking fee, the booking fee is actually in transition. It's still as a transition fee kept inside the client's account of the agency firm to be transmitted eventually to the owner. So the owner should be the person to decide who should keep the booking fee. In a scenario, it is supposed to be the listing agent. So the listing agent keeps the booking fee, which is paid by the co-agent's purchaser, and eventually when the deal is done, the fee to be claimable by the listing agent as according to the appointment or the engagement terms inside the engagement. And these engagement terms should comply to MEAS 3, which is types of engagement, which in this scenario usually would be an exclusive engagement or a sole engagement, and the terms and conditions of how much to charge as a commission or a professional fee, and what are the forfeiture and the right to take it out from the client's account. So that is specified in the engagement letter. On the part that the vendor, the owner, actually give this engagement to the listing agent. So on this part, the who is to keep the earnest deposit or booking fee, conventionally it should be the listing agent. Although the new standard 2020 standard 7 actually says either side, the listing agent or the co-agent can keep the earnest deposit or the booking fee. Right. So let us move on. What else is inside the co-agency agreement? So the purpose of a co-agency agreement is to signify that the power is on the listing agent. That listing agent has the right to represent the property from the owner side. And then that means that he has to protect that right by saying that the co-agent or the whoever work with, but in particular a particular person, not just the co-agency, but the particular person. Let's say it is a negotiator Raghu from the agency ABC, then it has to specify that only the negotiator Raghu has the agency allow to bring forward a purchaser. It cannot be any other branch of the same agency. That means if it is ABC, given the co-agency letter of agreement, and then the co-agency has got a few branches, it cannot be other branches to bring forward the purchaser unless it is agreed again by the listing agent. So this part do not cut the vendor here. Specifically says that the listing agent has all the right to control how the property is marketed, so how the property is being promoted, and not by the core agency agreement, that this power is diluted to the core agent. Simply how core agent want to bring the prospect, then it would upset the position of the listing agent. So the listing agent has to be there doing all the viewing and doing all the talking, and for the purpose to not misrepresent the property, because the scenario of this vendor has given the engagement to the listing agent, and then the listing agent is empowered by agency contract to do the job correctly, whereas the core agent is not. Core agent has no direct engagement with the vendor, and therefore if the core agent has misrepresented the property to the prospect, then eventually the whole engagement is actually misrepresented. So therefore it has a reason behind the listing agent being there all the time answering to the prospect. Of course, the core agent can stand on the side and listen and learn, but then the core agent cannot be the one who present the property. And therefore, another reason is there is no right for the core agent to advertise the property, being that the basis of the appointment is actually engagement by the vendor to the listing agent. There is no deals or no agency contract between the vendor and the core agent. There is no such agency contract, and therefore the owner has never agreed to give to the core agent for advertisement. If you look back at MEAS 3 on the types of appointment, usually in the engagement letter by the vendor to the agency which represent as a listing agent, there is a clause there that allows the agent to do advertisement, and that is an important clause to say that the agency which is appointed allowed to be representing the vendor to do the promotion. So of course the vendor given this right to the agent, the listing agent, it also needs to be careful. The professional agent should not misrepresent or mislead the property's information. So therefore core agent should not advertise and cannot advertise for the purpose that there is no legal position, no permission given. Secondly, because the core agent, when they advertise, they will not differentiate. They cannot differentiate between a core agent and a listing agent. Currently in Malaysia, you do not see advertisement that says that this agent is actually an exclusively appointed agent. None actually believe that particular advertisement would carry the engagement letter details of how the agency is being appointed. And you can say that most of the scenario, the public doesn't understand whether this agency is appointed as a listing agent, or so there is no advertisement that actually shows that this is a core agent advertisement and that is a listing agent advertisement. And you can't tell whether this is an exclusive advertisement by given the exclusivity of doing this advertisement by a vendor, because it is very hard to check, because nobody can check who is the vendor. And vendor appointing an agent, one of the reason is to leave it to the agent to do the job and doesn't want to entertain public. So that is how in a real life scenario you can't see a advertisement that's actually list out it is an exclusive appointment or it is a listing agent versus ad hoc agent or a appointment which is as a core agent. So core agent should not advertise based on the above two conditions that I will repeat. That first is there is no legal position because he's never engaged by the vendor, not allowed permission to advertise by the vendor. Second, doing advertisement in a scenario like a co-agent advertising outside of his power is in fact inviting misrepresentation and inviting confusion among the public to talk to the co-agent, whereby the co-agent has no position to represent the vendor. It makes more confusion than the rightful way of treating your prospect buyer lah. So a prospect buyer should understand going to your co-agent is just to let your co-agent represent you to engage with the listing agent. At the end, the co-agent is to collect fee from the listing agent, not from you, and therefore you are just being introduced in that way to the listing agent. You can choose to do this by believing that your co-agent does his part in worthy of the position that he deliver his service, would be introduced to the listing agent for a specific niche property lah. Of course, if we go back to the first scenario where I highlighted that if prospect purchaser actually appoint his own agent and his own agent is paid a fee, not sharing the fee with the listing agent, then it is not co-agency lah. So in such a sense of appointment, both sides appoint their own agent and the agent negotiate on behalf of the principal, on behalf of the purchaser on this side and on behalf of the owner or seller on the other side. Then each pay their own agency fee, and therefore in such a manner, of course, the co-agent is in this position not a co-agent anymore. Would introduce the purchaser to the listing agent, and then when the deals is closed, each agency claims their professional fee from the client who appoints them, or clients that appoints individual firm. Right, the other part I want to talk about the dirty tricks in the MAS scenario of co-agency, which is standard 7, is that the co-agent, although not being appointed by the vendor, should still go and do some dirty things, doing the dirty tricks. The co-agent will go and hang banner, for example, and the co-agent still go and do their advertising, taking picture of the house and go and do advertising as if they are the listing agent. The co-agent actually still want to bring their potential prospect and go and do the viewing without the listing agent. And therefore, co-agent at the end should be aware of this sort of issue. So public who want to buy a property should look for the listing agent, not look for a third-party agent who claims himself as a co-agent without showing you that this co-agent actually has a working relationship or co-agency with the listing agent. Usually at the end, the main purpose for this co-agent who does this dirty tricks is to collect purchasers' booking fee. So collecting the money, and later on I would say that yes, I introduced to you this property and therefore you should pay me, whereby at the end you may argue that no, this booking fee should be paid to the owner, because the owner at the end may not agree to go through the co-agent to sell the house, because the owner already appointed his listing agent, and the co-agent who does the dirty tricks actually doesn't have a working relationship with the listing agent, and therefore not in law of agency allowed to so-called represent the seller. So the co-agents actually purposely trying to do this to drag on until the co-agent can speak direct to the vendor, to the owner, and try to persuade the owner to give appointment or engagement to let him sell this property. So in the market we say that this is to cut others and this is a bad faith, a very bad practice, or should be avoided. So if the call agent cannot get to the vendor because the vendor already has signed up an exclusive appointment or engagement, or given a sole engagement to the other agency, then you choose other vendor, you go and look for other seller. Don't go and mess up the soup, mess up the scenario of a good agency who is exploited because they have done their part, and yet you want to undercut them. So my conclusion for this, actually giving the MAS 7, MAS 3 and 5 which are involved, is that letter of a call agency actually talks about the relationship between the listing agent and the call agent. I have spoken about the both parts, whether the listing agent is initiating the deal, or is it the call agent that is more interested in trying to propose to the listing agent. So either it is prepared by the listing agent or prepared by the call agent. So in a lot of cases where the property is a niche area property and the listing agent has tried and unable to close the deal, usually it's the listing agent which is more motivated to give the agreement of call agency to the call agent, because the call agent may bring in specifically a particular potential buyer. So what are the content of the call agency agreement? So mainly is, of course, for this particular deal, that means specific on a particular negotiator or a particular branch of an agency, signed by the principal or the REA of that agency, and then the time frame, so it's given to a certain number of weeks or months, and then to allow maybe follow up for a certain period, and then the part that it is how much is the sharing of the fee, and usually these are in a strict format written as in the MAS, so you can refer to MAS for the details, and I extract the MAS here. So here is I just blow out a bit. For the sale of property, what is the property address? And then between the particular agent who is interested to do this call agency, and then the sharing, how much is the sharing, and the 50%, if there is any reason that deal did not go through and agency is able to claim 50% of the forfeited deposit or the forfeited booking, whichever is lower. This is in accordance to the appointment, which is the MAS 3. So if the deal was aborted due to one part of the parties not proceed to sales and purchase agreement, the 50% agreed work done fee, because the work is done, 50% done, not yet 100%. 100% means SPA sign. So this forfeited deposit or half of the allowed professional fee, whichever is the lower, should be shared out. So it becomes 25% only for the both party. The listing agent keep 25%, the call agent keep 25%, the 50% of course given back to the owner, given to the owner, forfeited to the owner, right? So the who to keep as a stakeholder, who to keep, and who is the neither of the negotiator from the perspective should conduct any direct negotiation, so they cannot talk direct, they have to go through the correct channel and signed by both sides. So this is the major few elements, points inside the call agency appointment. Thank you very much. These are my platforms. I have done 4 areas of work. One is the contract to you, which is the index And we have the online system for self-study on the Diploma in Estate Agency exam. My channel for all my videos inside this My Real Property Online, and then the finehui.info. Thank you. I'm Thomasin PA2066. This is my mobile number, the 3 listing website, as well as the education website. Thank you very much.